All right, let's talk about Stellar Blade for a minute, because somehow we are right back in the exact kind of internet argument that happens every time a game has style, confidence, and a female lead who does not look like she was designed by a committee terrified of screenshots.
The new Stellar Blade project got people talking immediately. Some people saw the trailer and thought, okay, this looks fast, flashy, and weird in the best way. Other people saw the same footage and decided it was time to turn the whole thing into a courtroom drama. And that is the part I find exhausting, because you can like or dislike a character design without acting like a video game trailer is evidence in a criminal investigation. My first reaction was pretty simple. Stellar Blade is back, and the footage looks cool. That was it. I was looking at the city, the movement, the combat, the lighting, the way the new lead moves through this huge futuristic environment, and I thought, yeah, I want to know more about this. But the second the trailer hit social media, the conversation became less about the game and more about everyone trying to prove what kind of person you are based on, whether you are interested in Stellar Blade. You know how this goes. One account, let's call them Neon Finch, posts something like, I love the background art, but the heroine looks like another doll-faced fantasy figure. Then another account, maybe Screen Tribunal, jumps in and says, this is exactly why these studios keep getting side-eyed. Then the replies split into two armies, and within 5 minutes, nobody is talking about animation, combat, story, world building, or anything that actually matters in a game. That is the annoying thing about Stellar Blade discourse. It does not stay normal for more than 10 seconds. If you say the game looks fun, somebody tries to make that suspicious. If you say the heroine looks stylish, somebody acts like you have confessed to a moral failure. If you say the criticism feels exaggerated, someone claims you are refusing to listen. And meanwhile, the trailer is sitting there with lightning, monsters, a packed future city, and a character throwing hands like she came from a sci-fi martial arts movie. The new setting is one of the things I am most curious about. Stellar Blade had a pretty specific world. It was broken, hostile, and lonely in a lot of places, with humans pushed into limited spaces and survival always hanging over everything. This new footage feels different. There are crowds, city lights, people moving around like society has rebuilt itself or at least changed in a major way. That makes me wonder if this story is taking place much later, or if we are seeing a different corner of the world that the first game did not really explore. That is the kind of speculation I wish people were having more of. Is this a direct sequel? Is it set far in the future? Is it showing a restored civilization? Is this new protagonist connected to the old cast? Or are we looking at a new branch of the same universe? Those are interesting questions. Those are the questions that make me want to replay Stellar Blade and pay attention to the lore again. But no, the loudest argument became the character design. And look, character design is fair game. People are allowed to dislike things. If someone says, I do not vibe with this outfit, fine. If someone thinks the lead should look older, tougher, more armored, less polished, whatever, that is their opinion. Nobody has to clap for every creative choice. The problem is when criticism turns into accusation, and suddenly a stylized heroine in Stellar Blade is treated like proof of some massive problem with the audience, the developer, or an entire region's approach to art. That jump is where the conversation loses me. The new lead, at least from what we have seen, looks like a sleek anime-style action heroine. She has that sharp, futuristic look, a smaller frame, big movement, and a design that feels built for speed. I did not see the trailer and think, oh no, what are they doing? I saw a character who looks like she belongs in a high-energy action game. Maybe the design changes later, maybe it gets refined, maybe the final version looks very different. This is game development. Early trailers are not stone tablets. People also need to remember what happened with the first Stellar Blade. The final version of that game did not appear fully formed out of nowhere. Designs shift, models change, Outfits get adjusted, combat gets tuned, presentation evolves. Early footage is a preview, not a finished museum piece. And if this new Stellar Blade follows the first game at all, customization is probably going to be part of the experience anyway. The first game gave players a lot of ways to change the look of the protagonist, from outfits to hair and other visual details. So even if someone does not love the default design in a trailer, there is a very real chance the full game gives you options. That does not erase the conversation, but it should calm people down a little. What makes the drama feel especially forced is that Stellar Blade already went through this exact cycle. Before the first game came out, there were people who seemed committed to treating it like a problem before most players had even touched it. The conversation around the character design became so loud that you would think the game had nothing else going on. Then, the demo arrived, people played it, and a lot of the noise got quieter because the combat was actually good. That matters. Stellar Blade was not just a character model walking around for screenshots. It had tight parries, satisfying dodges, stylish finishers, great boss encounters, strong music, and a real sense of momentum. You can disagree with the presentation, sure, but pretending the appeal began and ended with the heroine's body was always dishonest. When I played Stellar Blade, I was not thinking, this game only works because the protagonist looks good. I was thinking, the timing windows feel nice, the bosses are fun, the world has atmosphere, and the game understands spectacle. That is why people stuck with it. That is why people still talk about Stellar Blade. The game delivered a complete action experience for a lot of players. So when the new trailer shows a different lead and a different style of movement, my first instinct is not to panic. My first instinct is to ask what kind of combat identity this character has. Is she more hand-to-hand? Is the blade secondary this time? Is the mechanical arm or gauntlet the center of the kit? Are we getting aerial chains, heavier counters, more mobility, or something closer to a character action game? That is where my brain goes, because Stellar Blade earned enough trust for me to be curious. Now, I do understand one part of the fan reaction. Some people wanted the original heroine back as the main character, and I get that. When you spend a full game with a protagonist, you get attached. You want to know what happens next. You want the sequel to pick up those threads. That is completely normal. But a new lead does not automatically mean the old one is gone forever. Games do this all the time. Sometimes the first protagonist becomes a mentor. Sometimes they show up later. Sometimes you play as both. Sometimes the new character exists to expand the world, not erase what came before. Stellar Blade has enough room for more than one important character. Honestly, a new protagonist could be good for the series if they handle it right. It lets the combat change without feeling like the original character suddenly forgot her own style. It gives the story a chance to explore another perspective. It lets the developers surprise the audience instead of just repeating the same arc with a bigger budget. That said, Shift Up has to be smart here. The audience for Stellar Blade is not a mystery. People liked the first game because it was stylish, polished, dramatic, and unapologetically itself. If the sequel tries to sand off every edge because social media yelled for a week, that would be a mistake. But if it simply expands the world, introduces a new lead, and keeps the energy that made Stellar Blade work, then I think most players will be open to it. The bigger issue is that online criticism often pretends to be bigger than it is. A few viral posts can make it seem like the entire world is furious, when really it might just be a handful of accounts performing outrage for engagement. That is true on both sides, by the way. One person says something dramatic, another person reacts even louder, and suddenly everyone is trapped in a loop where the least reasonable voices get the microphone. The actual player base is usually quieter. They watch the trailer, maybe make a joke, maybe argue with a friend, then decide whether they want to buy the game. That is the audience Stellar Blade should care about most. The people who played the first game, enjoyed the combat, liked the world, and want the sequel to build on that foundation. There is also this weird double standard around stylized female characters. If a character is glamorous, people say she is just fan service. If she is athletic and small-framed, people say she looks too young. If she's older and muscular, someone else says the design is trying too hard. If she's plain, people call it boring. At a certain point, it starts to feel like the target keeps moving, so nobody can ever actually win. And again, I am not saying every design is above criticism. Some designs are bad. Some outfits do not fit the setting. Some characters look like they came from a completely different game. Critique is part of art. But critique should be specific. Say the silhouette is weak. Say the costume is too busy. Say the face does not match the tone. Say the animation looks stiff if it does. Those are useful comments. What is not useful is looking at Stellar Blade and immediately turning the conversation into a moral sorting ceremony. That does not help the game. It does not help the audience. It does not even help the people making the criticism, because after a while everything starts sounding like the same recycled argument with a new screenshot attached. I also think people forget how much Asian action games, anime, manga, and pop culture have influenced this entire design space. You do not have to like that style, but acting shocked every time a Korean or Japanese studio makes a sleek, youthful, highly stylized heroine is strange. This is not new. This visual language has been around for decades. Stellar Blade did not invent it, and the new project is not the first time someone has built a character around speed, elegance, and exaggerated cool factor. That is part of why the outrage feels predictable. It is not really about this one trailer. It is about a larger argument people keep dragging from game to game. Today it is Stellar Blade. Tomorrow, it will be something else. A month from now, another trailer will drop. Another heroine will appear, and the same accounts will dust off the same talking points. Meanwhile, a lot of players are just sitting there thinking, can I see the boss fights? Because that is what I want. Show me the bosses. Show me how the new combat works. Show me if the city is explorable or just a backdrop. Show me whether the soundtrack still hits. Show me how the story connects to the first Stellar Blade. Show me if the enemies have the same unsettling biomechanical style or if the sequel is moving towards something cleaner and more urban. Those are the details that will decide whether the game is great. The trailer already has pieces that interest me. The urban scale looks bigger. The movement looks heavier in some places and faster in others. The new lead seems built around impact, not just blade work. The effects have that dramatic, over-the-top quality that made the first Stellar Blade memorable. It looks like the developers are trying to keep the identity of the series while giving this entry its own flavor. That is a good sign. A sequel should not just be the first game again with a different subtitle. It should understand what people liked and then push somewhere new. The danger is not that Stellar Blade changes. The danger is that it changes for the wrong reasons, or forgets why people cared in the first place. And that is where I land on the whole thing. I do not want Shift Up chasing random approval from people who already decided they hate Stellar Blade as a concept. I also do not want them ignoring all criticism just because some of it is bad. The smart move is to listen to useful feedback, protect the core identity, and make the strongest action game they can. If people are worried about the protagonist, fine. Let them say that. If people love the design, fine. Let them say that too. But this need to turn every conversation about Stellar Blade into a culture war argument is tired. Sometimes a game can just have a stylish heroine, a dramatic trailer, and a fan base that wants to see where the story goes next. I am interested in the new Stellar Blade because the first game gave me a reason to be interested. It was not perfect, but it had a clear identity. It knew what it wanted to be. It had confidence. In an industry where so many big games feel focus-tested until the personality is gone, that counts for a lot. So yes, I want to see more. I want a longer gameplay demo. I want confirmation on whether this is a sequel, a spin-off, or something else. I want to know how the old cast factors into the story. I want to know whether the combat has deeper systems this time. And yes, I want the developers to keep the visual flair that made Stellar Blade stand out in the first place. The internet can argue in circles if it wants to. That is what the internet does. But when the game finally lands, all the posting in the world will matter less than one simple question. Is it fun to play? That was the question Stellar Blade answered the first time, and that is the question this new project has to answer now. If the answer is yes, the drama will burn hot for a week, fade out, and the people who actually wanted the game will be there playing it. And honestly, that is how it should be. Because at the end of the day, Stellar Blade does not need permission from the loudest people online to exist. It needs a strong vision, great combat, memorable characters, and the courage to keep being what it is. If the sequel can do that, then I am in. So those are my thoughts. The trailer looks promising, the outrage feels overcooked, and the best thing Shift Up can do is focus on making another sharp, stylish, satisfying action game for the people who actually showed up for Stellar Blade in the first place.